Hey everybody, this is my presentation for the Lake Forest Mall real estate property site. This is Adam Kosna speaking right now. So let's go ahead and get started. So quick summary of the property itself. The site is located in Gaithersburg, Maryland. Some background information. According to the Gaithersburg official government website, the city is home to more than 4,000 businesses. It's right in the middle of the fourth largest retail market in the United States, central to the Boston-Atlanta corridor. Has a lot of biotech centers and capabilities, or capitalizes on the proximity to federal research facilities like the National Institute of Standards and Technology and the Health and Food and Drug Administration. The site is home to one of the highest educated populations in the country. Maryland ranks fourth in percentage of population with a bachelor's degree and second in the percentage with a graduate or professional degree. So that's something to consider when you're looking into some of the consumer spending and residential development that we'll talk about in a little bit here. So a little bit about the property itself. It's surrounded by a lot of main intersections. We'll get to a picture of that shortly. And I-270 runs just west of the property itself, which is a major interstate. I'm sure as many of you guys are aware, that gets really backed up during the work week. In the picture on the right, you can see I included a little bit larger view to see how close proximity is to Bethesda, Great Falls towards the southwest, and kind of you can see the parts of Silver Spring, Maryland, and Washington D.C. that it runs right next to the west as well. The property itself is a pretty good central location, as mentioned, kind of at the intersections of North Frederick Ave, Montgomery Village Ave, and Lost Knife Road. So there are a couple bodies of water on the site, which could be utilized for a couple different types of properties, which we'll also mention a little bit later on. Kind of provides a little bit of a competitive advantage in terms of topography and landscape. If someone's interested in creating some type of, extravagant entrance for some type of residential property, or any type of public park or something like that, or private park next to an office building. So moving along, some of the key factors that I took into consideration here were demographic trends, consumer spending, neighboring property types, construction pipeline of various properties, the existing property types around the area already, existing total square footage, and overall accessibility, roadways, and public transportation. And obviously for this site, the biggest advantage in terms of transportation is its proximity to I-270 and some of the major avenues as well. So the first thing we considered was office space, and I think the key takeaway here is the property is oversaturated. There are already over 20 proposed properties in the immediate submarket, and the approximate rental area comes out to just over 19 million square feet, and pre-lease space currently sits at about 2 million square feet, which means 10% of the incoming inventory, either proposed or under construction, is already 100% pre-leased, but that still leaves approximately 90% of the incoming space scheduled to be vacant, which is not very good for a prospective office space. It means that the supply coming online is a little bit, like I said, oversaturated, and there might be trouble leasing some of the space, no matter how nice you try and make it to be a trophy class building. Some of the things you could do to mitigate that are, try and create one of the best office properties in the area, creating a trophy space building with a lot of amenities, but there's no guarantee that your competitors won't be doing the same. And with vacancy rates just under 10%, and so 19 million square feet in the pipeline, competition obviously is going to be very high, so probably best to steer clear away from a potential office development. Residential is a bit of a different story. The Lake Forest Mall PTA has seen a population rise of approximately 2.6% between 2000 and 2010 via the census, and has experienced roughly a 6.6% increase in the last 5 years, and projected growth over the next 5 years, or 2015 to 2020, is supposed to be 5.7%, which is pretty promising for a potential residential area. There are a lot of residents between the ages of 45 and 64, which make up approximately 25% of the population. And as I'm sure many of you are familiar, they are consider those empty nesters, people that are moving towards going back to those multifamily properties, apartment complexes, with a lot of great amenities since their kids are away already at school and starting off their own lives. And that brings in millennials, those people that have left those nests, that make up over 33% of the population in that area. Rental rates are approximately at just over $1,400 per month, and the vacancy is very low, just over 3%. The average rental rate has grown approximately 3 to 4% since 2011, so that is good sign for any potential residential development. You know that you probably have a safe bet, especially with the average household income at $96,000. It's a lot higher than the national average, which shows an educated population, allows for a new supply of kind of mid-luxury, luxury apartments that have a lot of amenities for those empty nesters and millennials. On the right, you'll see a CoStar map that shows some of the newest multifamily additions. That includes Gaithersburg Station Apartments, Hidden Creek Apartment Homes, Spectrum Majestic, and the Paramount Apartments. And like I said, that's all via CoStar. You can see there's 4 here in the subject site highlighted in yellow. And these rental rates range from $1,400 and up, with asking rent per square foot of approximately $1.50 to $2 per square foot. So overall, residential seems to be a safe bet, especially since it's surrounded by some retail, kind of some luxury or mid-luxury, high-rise multifamily apartments could be a good development option for a good ROI. Next up, we have retail, which is going to end up being the most favorable type of property development type. A very, very telling key statistic. There's some key statistics here show the growth in consumer spending from 2015 to 2020 of some key products and services. The first 2 being grocery and food away from home, such as restaurants, things like that. See food away at home at 7.5%, food away from home 7.7%, alcohol at 6.7%, household furniture 12% growth, which also kind of ties into that potential residential demand that's going to be coming online, as well as the household appliances as well too. Here you can see at 18.9% growth. Miscellaneous equipment 17%, apparel 12%, sports and rec pretty high at 14%, and then personal services at 13.6%. And I kind of created a capture rate to see the amount of supportable retail space in the Lake Forest area. And I try to keep some pretty conservative capture rates, since this Lake Forest PTA, or this Lake Forest Mall site, is located in a pretty densely populated area, and kind of like around Bethesda and all those places that already have a high population with a high average household income. So you can see the capture rates here down the line from 35, anywhere from 15 to 35%. And when you take all this into consideration, I came out with 523,000 square foot amount of supportable retail. So overall, taking into consideration the amount of growth in consumer spending, the amount of supportable retail, and the amount of household income and influx of population that's expected to grow in the next 5 to 10 years, retail would be a great property type to choose from. And with 500,000 square feet, you can have numerous different types of retail vendors, such as you can have a large Walmart as the anchor tenant, or a giant. You can have some smaller places like a Chipotle, maybe a Gold's Gym in there, Potbelly, some type of small restaurant, even some salon services or anything like that, personal service type, hair cutteries and whatnot. Mixed use kind of takes advantage of both the demographics and the consumption. It would probably be a solid choice as well for the site. You could have a large kind of retail area that you see popping up in some of the areas in BC and Silver Spring, Maryland and Bethesda, with a grocery store anchor tenant and some restaurants on the bottom, maybe a CVS or a Walgreens, with luxury apartments on top of those. And that'll cater to those millennials and empty nesters that are, in particular the millennials that are starting to get married later on in life and focusing on their careers. They'll be looking for those apartments rather than residential homes in the area. And couple that with the growing consumption rates that we saw in the earlier slides. Mixed-use development, retail slash multifamily would be a pretty solid option. So some final thoughts. Retail and residential are both favorable options, with mixed use kind of tying the gap between the two, or bridging the gap between the two, and offering for a good middle ground. Office is unfavorable due to the just sheer amount of supply that's coming along and the unfavorable pre-leasing from that 19 million square feet. So some more final thoughts taken into consideration from the first slide that I mentioned: demographic trends, the growing population, households and submarket itself being in close proximity to DC and the expanding DMV area. Consumer spending, took into consideration the projections in 2020 and growth across all consumer products. The neighboring property types, the like properties that are around the property promoting some growth, like some of the retail that's around the area that supports more retail or multifamily. The construction pipeline in support of roughly 500,000 square feet of retail, and not in support of the office. Existing property types around already. Existing total square footage, support for retail space, as I mentioned, at 500,000 square feet, and the overall accessibility, namely the streets and avenues right around the property and Interstate 270. So, all in all, retail is probably the most favorable property type to pursue, residential being a close second, and mixed use being an option as well for the developer, with office kind of being thrown out of the equation. So that includes my presentation. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks.